Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm joined by John Paul Mason, and we're here to talk all things Celtic. Welcome back. JP, how's your week been, first of all? How you been doing?
Yeah, good. Just enjoying the changing weather in Glasgow from freezing cold on Saturday at Celtic Park. Like, possibly one of the worst set of conditions I can remember for a game of football in a long time. Mark in front of me had to move his wee boy like further back because he was just getting absolutely drenched. I said to him, I was like, this is a core memory for him. I was like, oh, well, even though he's like 3 or 4, he'll probably remember this for the rest of his life. Like, I remember that day I was in the freezing cold at the football with my dad.
It builds character. It galvanises you. And see the thing, right? We have a lot of things that we can't control in this country that doesn't stop us from going to watch the football, JP. We still turn out in record numbers if you want to look at populations around Europe. We're always at the top of the table. And yet, despite all that, the authorities continue to try and make a mockery of the game. The latest one being the reconstruction. There is a suggestion that they're thinking about bringing it down to a 10-team league, when, I don't know about you, but every football fan, be that Celtic supporter or any fan of any football club in Scotland, they don't want to see that. So is there no consultation when it comes to making these massive decisions about the structure or the future of the game? Because, you know, you could quite easily access season ticket holders via every separate club and ask them for their opinion on this. And I'm pretty sure the vast majority would say no.
Well, I mean, or representatives of the clubs. Are the clubs being consulted in this either? Or is it just some sort of think tank of...
It'll go to a vote eventually, won't it?
Well, yeah. It is some sort of think tank of so-called geniuses that are coming up with this. But when they make these big decisions, they're going to inevitably last for quite a long time. So whatever decision they make, if there is reconstruction, then they need to make sure they do the right thing for, you know, the next generation or couple of generations of Scottish football supporters. So, and to protect the clubs as well, because let's face it, there's a risk of big clubs with big traditions and big supports. Say, for example, Dunfermline, and you look at where Dunfermline are. Could Dunfermline be a Premier League club if with the right investment and the right management and everything else? I mean, I watched the highlights last night just to see how they played and what it looked like and stuff. Because obviously I saw Bobby Bluebell had tweeted.
Did you see that?
Yeah, saying great win for Lenny tonight, and I was like, whoa, beat Livingston. That is quite a big result in terms of their league. So, but you see like the empty seats in East End Park, and you think they were a big club. I mean, you think back to Celtic Dunfermline games in the early noughties and stuff like that, and it was a full house at East End Park, and as you said before, they still bring a decent support to their home games. Maybe not last night, but
you know there was 4,800 last night.
All right, well there you go. That just proves to show that they've got a stadium clearly that can accommodate. I mean, what's the capacity at East End Park?
Just over 10. It used to be higher, obviously, but just over 10 is the capacity. JP, this isn't a Dunfermline loving. Obviously, Lenny and Wanyama are there. There was a big Scott Brown first game and all that. So there was an added interest in terms of Celtic. But I think they're a classic example. They're a classic example of a club that's languishing where they are now. And that's basically based on merit. They are where they are because they've been rotten for 13 years, right? But with the right investment and hopefully the new guy that's come in, they'll be able to do it. They're obviously ambitious. I mean, Neil Lennon's there, and that was a great result. But I think the expansion of a league opens up the possibilities for teams like Dunfermline, Partick Thistle, Falkirk. Probably Wraith Rovers would be in that conversation. Queen's Park has shown some ambition over the last few years. There is potential in Scottish football, but we continually shoot ourselves in the foot when it comes down to it. I reckon there's 2 massive clubs and there's 6 big clubs in Scotland, and I've named them time and time again. 2 Edinburgh sides, Aberdeen and Dundee United, alongside Celtic and Rangers. Then you've got a clutch of teams that, given the right platform, JP, could really improve. They could really improve the whole function of the football club, the recruitment, the academies, the whole thing could get better. And then with that, there's obviously an increase in people going, there's an increase in interest. But every single thing seems to be the authorities against the football clubs. And that's, I mean, the tagline on today's show, and you probably don't even know what it is because we don't send out the agenda, but the tagline on today's show is about the title party. It's like every single time.
I did see that.
We come up against, authority every single time. And the authority could be the football authority or the council authority or the police authority. They just put big blocks in the way of anything football related. They really do. And I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like. Look, right, in order to get a street party, if Celtic win the league and possibly even the treble, but it would be the league title party. If you were to organise, imagine how horrific this must be to attend this meeting, where there would be MSPs, community council. I don't know if anybody's been involved in a meeting with a community council, but by God, they make things difficult, right? Then the SPFL, the most backward-thinking authority in European football, Glasgow City Council and Police Scotland. Imagine going in there to try and organise something. You imagine the red tape you need to get through, the hoops you'd need to jump through, JP, to organise a celebration in a street somewhere in Glasgow.
Oh, you don't need to talk to me about red tape in the council. I'm not going to go into it, but we have an ongoing issue at Tuts with parking at the rear of the venue that's just become an absolute nonsense. It's a long story. I'm not going to go into it just now, but I am well aware of, as soon as you present red tape into the conversation, it just means like, oh, we can just add a year to this. We can just put it at the bottom of the pile and concentrate on things that are happening, tomorrow or today or something like that. And then if it's something that they don't think is important, then it just gets pushed way down the pile. And I would imagine, despite the numbers involved and the things that it affects, a Celtic title party is probably not on their list of priorities. Therefore, it's not something that they'll look at with any sort of speed of thought or anything like that. There'll be no kind of like, all right, well, this is what we do, right, let's do that and implement it. It's like, oh, right, well, we could do this and we could do that, and it's just Celtic,
but see that
it's
contempt,
just football or Celtic or whatever,
Yeah, but that contempt for football and the contempt for the music industry, which we've seen at its absolute worst during COVID, JP, the absolute contempt for the industry that you're in, they should actually look at what both of those industries bring to the economy. And, Patrick spoke last week about Celtic bringing something like £250 million a year to the economy. And that report was something like 10 years ago, maybe 9 years ago, that report, the data. And there's a likelihood that that's gone up. So it should be a priority. It shouldn't be at the bottom of the pile, but you're right. They've got this contempt. I don't know if it's because the vast majority of people going to football games and gigs are working class. Therefore, we're not a priority. We should be. These two industries should be a priority to every authority in Scotland. And I can look at that and think to myself, Celtic will not get anywhere in that scenario. If you were representing your company, JP, and you had to go in to a meeting involving that kind of list of other people, and you just know they're going to kick the can further down the road, have another meeting for meeting's sake, and it's all very touchy-feely, but nothing actually gets done. You know what I mean? They're just very good at talking about doing stuff rather than doing it. Then it would be a nightmare. And that's why I'm saying bring it in-house. Have the title party at Celtic Park. Look at the footprint of Celtic Park. Look at how we could adapt that for a title party. We spoke about it before. We should be doing it on match days anyway. But, I mean, yesterday I was in Glasgow and I was interviewing a centenary hero. And it was brilliant, JP, because once you heard it was a centenary hero, you wanted to know which one it is to complete your own collection. And I think of signatures on a jersey. You've probably met Frank McAvennie a few times. But I've got to say this. This all ties into. I know we're taking wee digressions, but Frank McAvennie, from day one, has been a massive assistance and help to a Celtic state of mind in everything that I've done. So he attended the Quality Street Gang book launch. I had never met him. I'd never spoken to him. He attended that book launch and mingled with all the crowd and all the rest of it, which was unbelievable. Then he gave an interview for the Neely Mockin documentary because he loved Neely, having played, obviously, at a time when Neely was a kit man, stroke trainer. He still got involved in various things. And then when it came to a Celtic state of mind, he came to Stirling and gave us an interview way back when. And then again yesterday, he meets up with us with his co-host of his own podcast, Let Me Be Frank, Simon Houston. And they will be out on Friday night on the show. But the reason I brought that up is my wee fella and the missus go up to Celtic Park because it's a beautiful day, gorgeous day. There's nothing really to do when you're filming. It's like doors shut, everybody be quiet and let's go on with it. So they went away up to Celtic Park. I'm saying to the missus, did you enjoy it? But there wasn't much there to do. You know, they're just beautiful day, sunny day. They go into the shop, the wee guys wanting X, Y, and Z, but there wasn't much beyond that to actually do. And you're thinking, well, what about every day? Something to do. I know you can take the tour, and it's a world-renowned tour as well, JP. But there's a bandstand. On match day, there needs to be a bandstand. There could be beer tents. There could be fan zones. There could be things for kids. And I'm just thinking, for a title party, why not trial it? Why not do the title party and see what works, what doesn't work, and then start to build that into the match day experience? Because we've got the space there, haven't we?
Well, yes and no. I mean, obviously, the amount, the numbers you'd be talking about, you know, say it was on the day of a game at Celtic Park, you've got all the people that would maybe stay around after that, and then everybody that would congregate at the park that have either watched it on TV or in a pub or something like that. So the numbers would swell significantly, but there could be a part of it that's there. And then I don't understand why there's no thought given to doing it in somewhere like Glasgow Green. Like,
yeah.
I mean, as much as it's kind of fun and all that, you know, taking over the Tron Gate and, you know, being on that kind of cross section, and there's so many the drone shots you see of the footage of it.
Sensational.
But the reality of it is, and this is going to sound pathetic because I absolutely love recycling, and I walk around and I just see all the rubbish and I'm like, I can't deal with this. I know that's the last thing you should be worried about when you're celebrating winning another title. And obviously I do celebrate as well, but I just like the amount of waste and rubbish that's sort of put on the streets. And yes, you can talk about people going back to tidy it up, but the reality is it's going to be left to the people whose jobs it is to clean up the streets. So why not just put everybody in one place in Glasgow? It makes the clean-up operation a lot easier. There's not going to be smashed glass. You wouldn't think if there is glass because it's on grass. Because obviously the smashed glass element is massive as well in the city. So, and also it would just feel like a proper celebration if everybody, I mean, like you get 50,000 people in Glasgow Green for Transmit. So is there going to be more than 50,000 people? Probably not.
I think you would enjoy it more. I don't know if that's because I have been for many, many years a festival goer, and I like that kind of environment, JP. And I like the idea that you've said there about Glasgow Green. I think it would work brilliantly. But that's just me because it's a personal thing. I would rather that than a street party. There are people out there who might think the absolute opposite. Let us know in the comments section. Do you think it's a street party? Do you think it's a party at Celtic Park or somewhere else like Glasgow Green? Because if you do it, I just think if you do it in the street, you're up against it with regards to all the red tape. I'm pretty sure the same kind of issues might arise with regards to do it at Glasgow Green. Would it be easier, JP, in your experience? You've been involved in big festivals in the past. Kind of like the what was the one recently? The one that Connect, the Connect Festival as well. And like you say, it's contained, isn't it, within this area? So the cleanup operation's a bit better. I mean, I'm guessing there's a lot of red tape in that kind of aspect of doing it in a field as well.
I don't know if there is. I don't know. I mean, what would seriously be to stop like a few, well, not a few, say 10,000 Celtic fans descending upon Glasgow Green with their respective bags of cans and the rest of it, you know, providing no harm was done to the green itself. Like, I mean, what difference does that make from a couple of hundred people being there this afternoon sunbathing? You know,
enjoying the sun. Yeah,
it's what difference is there? So, I'm not saying that, you know, you get stages built and things like that, and then you've got like I don't know, various performers of Irish songs of protest and rebellion being. I don't know, that's certainly the idea of the council letting that fly is probably very slim. But I just don't. I don't think there should be an issue with that happening. If somebody said, right, this is where we're going, we're avoiding the town this time, you know, give people a rest from this, because it's happened several times, and I think it's maybe happened more vociferously as a result of a reaction to what happened in COVID in George Square, where it was kind of like, well, no, this is
how you do it. Yeah,
this is how you do it. We'll do it properly, and we'll not knock 7 bells out of each other. But having said that, I did see a couple of scraps in amongst the many thousands of people there, which was unsavoury to see. I don't know how anybody decides to get violent on a day like that. Just doesn't make sense to me. But obviously, 98% of the people that were there were all in good spirits and enjoying the sunshine, enjoying the celebration. But yeah, the Glasgow Greens it seems to me to be a kind of sort of a gimme, really, in terms of where you would want to gather, in terms of its location. It's not as if you're having to march miles away to another part of the city. It's right there. It's behind the Gallowgate. It's behind the place that everybody gathers. So I'm sure somebody could come in and shoot me down and be like, oh, well, that's nonsense. Why are you suggesting that? You can't do it because of X, Y, Z. And I'll be like, okay, I'll put my hands up and say, fine, you know better than me. But to me, it seems like if a statement was put out by a Celtic supporters group, whether it's, I don't know, whether it's the Celtic Supporters Association, whether it's the Green Brigade, the Boy, whoever it is, somebody just says, right, this is where we're doing it. And then everybody just goes there.
Yeah, it could be organised, and like you say, there's big enough organisations and fans groups and ultras groups. Like you say, that it could be something that they do internally. They just communicate, then they can engage with all their followers online. So you're right, you're absolutely right. But the council have come in because it's become almost like an annual event, and long may that continue as well.
Oh, absolutely,
Celtic having a title party. And who pays for it, Steve? Well, if it was up at the park, Celtic would need to pay for security and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it pays for itself, doesn't it? Really, if you've got a gathering at your place, then it would pay for itself. Elsewhere, it's not been organised, really. It's just been kind of like impromptu. So the clean-up operation, I'm pretty sure, would be just obviously, it's already been spoken about, hasn't it? They were talking about a 100 grand clean-up operation, JP.
But the thing is, if it wasn't an impromptu thing and it was planned and organised, and there was not prior knowledge to this happening and it had been communicated to the police, to the council and everything else, then it would be on the council to make life easier for them to provide large bins for the ultimate thing that's going to be like get left behind is glass bottles and cans. That is what will be there. But I mean, obviously in my OCD recycling head, I'm thinking, everyone will just put all their glass in the glass bins and all their cans in the can bins. And I know that does not happen. Again, from Transmit, weep at the thought of the waste that happens there. But I think that would give them an opportunity to put these large bins in place that were there, so you're reducing the clean-up operation, you would like to think. Because I think if people were in that sort of environment and they know that bins have been provided and everything else, they would just go and fling a bag in a bin rather than just leave it lying.
And it's also just again about communicating with the Celtic support through all the relevant channels, JP, to say this is happening, these are the processes that are in place, please follow them, please respect them, etc. Colin, what comes in? My view on this is that Celtic should take it in-house. JP has suggested that it should go somewhere like Glasgow Green. Others might think, no, we should still do it in the streets, but just with more provisions. Colin, what comes in to say, for the cost that Celtic get charged for the clean-up operation at the Trongate, Glasgow Green makes more sense. Make it a ticketed event, live music, a bar, merch. Celtic would make a fortune. Yeah, why not?
The only thing with that, I'm sorry to shoot Colin down, but the only thing with that is making it a ticketed event. You'd need to secure Glasgow Green with like fencing, and
it becomes a proper festival site, doesn't it?
Shield and everything, and I know that the cost of that is significant. It's one of the main costs, I think, along with policing and security. So I think if you were actually to make it an official event, that the costs would rise on the setup side of things. If it was more of a just kind of, right, this is where we're gathering, and obviously there wasn't the stages and Celtic weren't part of it officially, then I think it would be more likely to happen in the first instance, because I just don't think that Celtic would invest what would need to be invested in order for that to happen. I don't think they would get the return on it.
you bring back to mind, I went down to Meadowlands in Nottingham, Jerry Cinnamon, I think it was 2-3 years ago, JP. And the site was quite unusually within almost like a residential area. But like you say, it was high, big fences all the way around it, and the set-up operation, and that was quite a small site actually. Would have been extortionate. John 67, it should be about celebrating a title, not how much money Celtic can make off the fans. No, you're right, but I think we're now in a scenario where we're up against opposition of various authorities when it comes to this, so it needs to become organised, and if it's going to be organised, there will be costs, and if there's going to be costs, there needs to be a way of pulling them back. So not trying to rip off the fans, but make an opportunity, obviously, to make it work financially if it's the club that's paying it. Liam Divine, why not build a stage and have performers? I think we should do that beginning of every single game. I've been saying it for ages. That clover on the right-hand side as you walk up the Celtic Way, get a bandstand on there, get the tunes going. I'm all for it. Big shout out to Celtic contributor John Hughes, whose father was born on this day, 1943. Big Yogi, the original Yogi, and what a goal scorer he was. I was privileged to meet him a couple of times over the years as well, and I loved his company. You know what? I ended up in Dunblane. It was the first time I ever met Kevin Graham. He had big sideburns, Kevin Graham, at that time. I don't know if he remembers it. And I'd taken stuff up for the raffle. It was just after the release of the Neely Mockin documentary and book, so 2015. And I took stuff up for Kevin Graham, first time I ever met him. And John Hughes was one of the speakers that night. And I remember Yogi at that time, I hope I've got my timelines right, saying Celtic need to go out and get Brendan Rodgers. I remember him saying it. And I was like, that's not going to happen. And obviously it did.
He actually said that?
He did. He said it in front of the entire room. He just said, I think it was Ronnie Dyler time, wasn't it? And he was saying, the clubs that, we don't have the buzz around the stadium, fans aren't coming, they've lost it. We need to go out there and do something big. We need to go out and get Brendan Rodgers. Big Yogi said that. And it was he was with Tommy Gemmell, and he was at the Dunblane CSC. So that's my memory of the big fella. So a big shout out to young John and all the family as well on this day. I want to talk about this weekend, JP. There's lots happening. There's more players coming back into the fray as well, and it's St Johnstone, so it's a dress rehearsal, isn't it, for the Scottish Cup final? What do you make of this weekend's game? What do you think Rodgers is going to do with the team? Is he going to tinker it? Is Nawrocki going to play? Is Schlupp the answer for next season? There's lots of questions. Bernardo's back. Forrest is back. Sini Salo has taken the gloves. Schmeichel might come back for the end of the season. What do you do then? So there's quite a lot of questions to be asked. Let's start off with the goalie. You've been impressed. I know there's not much to talk of, but he seems solid enough so far.
There was a lot to be impressed about his reaction save, which I think took a nick before it got to him in the first half, because it was in that first sort of 5-10 minutes where, Hearts have probably put all their chips into getting an early goal and then seeing what they can do after that, to try and replicate what Rangers did and put the pressure on us. So I said last week that he's watched enough of Celtic and experienced enough of Celtic to know that one thing, that one chance might happen in a game, and that's when he needs to be switched on. And to be fair to him, he was, because that was the one time really where, without him being on it and reacting to that shot, then they get an early goal, and the psychology of the game changes, and psychology of the crowd changes as well, because that was a big game. As I said last week, that was a big game going in against them, who, let's face it, they hate us. There's no two ways about it. Their supporters hate us. The players have been somehow disciplined into playing better against us than they normally do. They won twice against us last season, home and away, and you see strong evidence online of how much they despise us. So to win comfortably over them is always nice, and you don't want to give them anything. So Sinisalo had that save to make, and other than that, I think he acquitted himself pretty well. He's playing behind two central defenders who haven't really played together at all, in Nawrocki and Carter Vickers. So not got that kind of, if they, if I'm not on it, then they're there or whatever. It's like they've not got that relationship. You know, it's not like Carter Vickers and Starfelt, who didn't lose. Am I right in saying they didn't lose a league game when they played together?
That's right. Yeah. I've seen Starfelt's name getting mentioned, and I just think people throw out wee rumours about ex-Celts coming back to the club constantly. But I think he's one of the guys, JP, that he's been much more loved since he left than he was when he was here, because he was one of the guys that got the criticism, Carol Starfelt.
He was, yeah, he definitely was. I remember vividly, like, defending him on here and things like that, because there was people that just had the guns trained on him all the time, like, just, oh, there's a mistake in him and all that. There's a mistake in every defender. There's been mistakes in Carter Vickers this season, you know. If Starfelt had scored their own goal against Bruges or let a man go against whoever, you know, that he would be absolutely lambasted for it. But Carter Vickers has got enough credit in the bank with most. I think I still saw a lot of criticism of Carter Vickers after the Rangers game, saying that it was maybe time to move on from him and all the rest of it. And I don't think we're quite ready to move on from Carter Vickers when he's our best centre half by a long, long way. But yeah, Sinisalo obviously has a big task in his hand, replacing Kasper Schmeichel, who's been amazing this season. There's no two ways about it. There was comments at the start of this season that he would cost us in Europe, and he was this and he was that, and he was done, and he's still playing for Denmark. I know that he received criticism for the game the other night, but he's still the captain of Denmark as things stand, and he still played all Denmark's games, and he's played virtually every game for us this season, and we're 13 points clear. We've won a League Cup, and we're a game away from reaching in a cup final. So he's got us to that point. It's not what Sinisalo played in the Wraith Rovers game, I think.
That's right, yeah. Yep.
So that's it. Everything else has been Schmeichel. So at this point in time, the gloves are his. I think it would be quite harsh if he was to play really well and keep that run going, that he just gets bombed out when Schmeichel comes back. Because like that, it's exactly the same way as, like, obviously Trusty was back on the bench. Do you drop Nawrocki after keeping a clean sheet as a centre half after being out in the cold for so long? Do you just bomb him out of the team on Sunday and put Trusty back in? Is that how it works? I
was talking about this yesterday, JP. My take on it, watching the way that he dealt with Liam Scales coming into the side, completely out the picture Scales he was at the time. That was a 1-0 game, wasn't it, at Ibrox, when Lagerbielke, there was that moment. And there was also a moment in the first 5 minutes with Scales, I think, should have won a header, something like that. But other than that, he was the man of the match. Liam Scales was brilliant that day. And then he went on this incredible run. And it was almost as if, you know, Brendan Rodgers says, right, you're there on merit and you're staying there. We had Nat Phillips, Gustav Lagerbielke, Mike Nawrocki. None of the three could get a game over Liam Scales because he just kept putting in the performances. Now, I don't actually think Nawrocki's going to go on that kind of run and be the first choice centre-half for a season and a half, having played virtually no football. That was the situation Liam Scales was in. I don't think that's going to happen. But in the short term, I think what the kind of situation is that Brendan Rodgers is saying, well, until Nawrocki's had a bad game, I'm not going to drop him. And I don't think he's had a bad game. I think in the 2 matches, yeah, we can pinpoint maybe certain inadequacies of his game. We could probably do that with every footballer virtually. But I think on form, he deserves to be in the team. I wouldn't drop him this weekend. What says you? I think long term or even medium term, Austin Trusty's your first choice, right? And he's on his natural side, and him and Carter Vickers need to start developing a solid partnership like the one you mentioned before with Starfelt. But at the moment, it would be harsh to drop Nawrocki.
Yeah, the only criticism I would have is that he's a lot slower at playing the ball out from the back. And it's not something that I genuinely can't say that I'm well versed in tactics or anything like that. My knowledge of that side of the game is fairly limited. I'll hold my hands up on that. I'm not going to sit here and try to be some sort of football expert just because I'm talking to you on a podcast. I don't have that knowledge. But it is quite obvious when you've got some. In fact, it became obvious to me the other night when I was playing at Tory Glen. I know that's just a terrible example, but I was playing primarily at the back, and if you get the ball out quicker from the defence, I don't play in defence normally. I normally play kind of like up front or on the wing or whatever. But I was playing at the back, and if you get the ball out quicker from defence, it catches the other team on the hop. They've not got as much time to assemble their structure and whatnot. So the better you've got in terms of that, and the better football and brain you have at the back to get the ball into the midfield and to get it up the park quicker, then the better it's going to serve the team. And I think that's probably one of those things that he's not good at. And again, we would bow to someone like Alan Morrison with their superior data knowledge to be able to sort of go, well, actually, you're right. Like that, here's the data proof that he isn't as good as Trusty or Scales even at getting the ball out quickly. But you can't argue with the fact that he kept a clean sheet at the weekend against a fairly decent team. I don't think they're great, but they've obviously been on a semi-decent run, the Hibs game aside. And there's a difference to their play than there was. Well, their league position would suggest that there's a difference to their play because they were at the bottom two at one point, and now they're further up the league. So I think Nawrocki deserves to start on Sunday. Whether or not that is the case, I don't know. I think it would be quite harsh if he was put out of the team. But whether or not, I mean, Rodgers has said, "Well, Greg Taylor will get games between now and the end of the season." Does that mean after the league's won, or does that mean before it? So,
well, the thing with Taylor is it's come out more into the open about his future, and we know that he's not going to be at Celtic next season. I think we try your best to give game time to, but again, he might want to have a kind of send off. I know that's sentimental, but once the league is won, that would be only fair. I'm going to bring this up. I have decided over the last 8 years, JP. Obviously, learning how to deal with negativity online has been something of an experience for me. And I've decided that you just shut it out. You shut it out. We've had a lot of it over the last couple of days where it's absolute vile, toxic. So you just shut it out. Don't give it any oxygen. Don't give it any oxygen. And that's the best way to deal with it. Just block, remove, hide. You can do that now. That's what you do, right? But I'm going to bring this up because the Flying Haggis, I seem to think that you have commented for some time on this particular platform because your name rings a bell. What's your avatar? There's your, yeah, you do ring a bell. But I'm bringing this up because it doesn't matter where you reside as a Celtic fan. It doesn't matter that by geographical default, I am currently in Fife. I've lived in various places throughout my life, as has JP. If you're a Celtic fan, you're a Celtic fan, and that's all that matters. I mean, I've had this all my life, JP, and I can trace my family roots right back, generations and generations. The one thing when my old gran passed away that I wanted from her house was this black folder because her and various other members of the family had been tracing the family tree. I'm intrigued by all that. You're intrigued by recycling, and I like a wee bit of the genealogy, right? And I was not surprised that no one in my family has ever had money. Everybody has worked either down the pits or as farmers, basically, right, all the way down. But what you could do is you could trace that family line. My granny was a Maguire from Donegal stock. There'll be people in the comment, loads of people in the comments with similar stories. So when you are born and your entire family in 3, 4, 5 generations of your family have supported one football club for a reason, are you going to turn around and say, oh, you know what, I'm going to choose this one that I have absolutely no affinity with, no connection to? I was speaking to my missus yesterday. She said to me, because obviously she went up to Glasgow, up to Celtic Park when I was interviewing Marca, and she said, what do you feel when you see it? And I told her the story about when me and my old man used to go through to the games, JP, and the Celtic supporters bus, it wasn't one of these fancy coaches. It was like one of the yellow school buses. Like the guy on The Simpsons drives. It was one of the things, right, that you could hire. And we would drive through from various Fife villages, park about 1.5 miles away from the stadium, square up the wee guy who was looking after the motors, and then walk down London Road. And you'd walk down, obviously, with the social club to your left. And eventually you would see the stadium. And there was just such a buzz. There was such a buzz, like, you're talking hairs in the back of the neck. That was me as a wee guy going to watch Celtic, and not a great Celtic team either. Now, obviously, it's changed a bit. The landscape has changed, so you see Celtic Park a lot sooner than you did before because it's so much higher. And I said to my missus yesterday, I get the same feeling every single time I see that stadium. There is a connection there. If Celtic and this is the difference for me, JP, in terms of do you support a football club or not? It's you support a football club for no other reason than the emotion that it gives to you. And that emotion's not always positive, because if you get beat, it ruins your day, your week, your weekend, your month, and there's no other football team that does that for me. So I can't possibly say that I could choose another football team from Scotland or elsewhere and have that same connection that I've had since I can only remember Celtic. They've been omnipresent in my life. Does it matter that I live in Dunfermline? Don't be daft. That is absolutely ridiculous. I could be living anywhere on the planet and I'll still have that chemistry and that feeling towards that football club that I'll not have for any other football club on the planet, JP. And I feel quite about that because, as Angelo Dundee, Muhammad Ali's coach, once said, it's not where you're from, it's where you're at. And that rings true for me.
Well, I mean, I can't believe I'm addressing the flying haggis. The guy's or woman has not even got a name. And interesting that he or she knows that I'm from the east of Falkirk. I didn't know Falkirk was divided up into north, east, south, and west. I didn't think it was big enough to have that. But if he wants to take issue with why I'm a Celtic fan, then he should probably get in touch with Frank McAvennie, because it's his fault that I'm a Celtic fan. There's nobody else to blame but Frank McAvennie, and the fact that an 8-year-old me watched the Scottish Cup final with my dad and was rooting for the team that was getting beat 1-0 for the whole game. And Frank McAvennie came on and scored 2 goals and changed the course of my life. Had I not watched that game, I don't know if I would be a Celtic fan. Maybe I would have ended up, but would I be a Celtic fan with the same level of passion? Probably not. To say that I'm from Falkirk, I was born in Manchester. That's
exactly. Where are you from?
Actual fact. I was born in Manchester, so
exactly.
I was born in Manchester. Does that mean I'm not allowed to support Celtic? I was in Manchester for less than 2 years. We moved to Falkirk when I was like 1.5, 2, and was in Falkirk for less than 2 years as well before I moved to Bathgate. Now, the last time I checked, Bathgate doesn't have a football team of any renowned with a stadium and anything like that. So at that point, you're either really choosing, and Livingston didn't exist in 1988, you're either choosing Celtic or Rangers or Hearts or Hibs. So if this flying haggis person is a Celtic fan and he's annoyed that I'm a Celtic fan because I wasn't born in a Glasgow postcode, like what do you want me to do there? Do you want me to choose Rangers instead? Like, I mean, I wouldn't
have a team. I wouldn't have a team, JP.
Yeah.
Because the only football team on this planet I have a connection, that connection that I spoke about, is Celtic. It's the only team. I mean, I can give you memories of family members coming into house parties in High Valleyfield and Fife, bigger Celtic supporters than I've ever met. You know, cousins and uncles, and it was an occasion coming in with bin liners for Celtic stuff. That was my upbringing. I'm not going to turn my back on that. And I would be turning my back on football because I don't have the same passion or connection to any other football club. And I'm in Dunfermline, I'm in Fife through geographical default, depending on where my dad was working. And that's the bottom line of it. And my dad's worked all over the place, all over Europe. So was that a change? I'm not sure what the team was where my dad worked in Norway, what the team was that would have been my local team. Is that what he's suggesting? You've just got a geographical default. What's the closest side? All right, okay, at the moment, it's Stroom Grat, so I need to support them. Come on.
And by the way, if that was also meant to be some sort of oh well, you're just a glory hunter or whatever, I went through that same decade as you, so I can tell you with absolute certainty that every single bit of silverware we put our hands on is celebrated by me as if it was the first. I didn't see us lift a trophy until I was 20 years old. The League Cup final, which is 25 years ago, which is absolutely wild, which obviously you did the watch along for. And I put myself through it.
You watched it, didn't you?
A few days later, I was like, you know what? I'm going to stick that on. I watched the full game.
What was your big takeaway? What was your big takeaway from that game?
Just like I said to you the other week, just the interview with Kyle Gleeson, just how far we've come in terms of 11 League Cups up to that point in our history, and then 11 League Cups since then, and could have and should have been more in that time, because you know the domination that we've had. But I mean that League Cup, although it wasn't anything really that big at the time, and was kind of just like, oh, well, we're nowhere in the league. We've been bounced out of the Scottish Cup by Inverness Cali. We're not doing well in Europe. Our top goal scorer, probably the best player that has ever played in my lifetime, is out injured with a leg break. It was pretty grim times, and you didn't know at that point what was about to come. Nobody knew that Martin O'Neill was coming. It's not as if it was signposted and you knew Martin O'Neill was coming at the end of the season. You had that to build towards. You just had an absolutely calamitous season, and then you're wondering, where do we go from here? Like, who's going to take us forward and into this new millennium? And there was so much money sloshing around in the game at that point. Obviously, not all of it above board, as we know now. But you're thinking to yourself, where do we go from here? And thank God, fate intervened, and because Martin O'Neill could quite easily have said no. He was in a good position. He didn't have to come in, and he could have looked at the previous season and been like, that's a hell of a job I've got in my hands. Do I want to be the guy that doesn't make a go of it at Celtic? So you've got to commend him for having the balls to be like, no, I'll come up, I'll do that. I'll leave this well-paid job in the Premier League with a club where the support idolise me and everything else. Because, I mean, it's always felt to me that, like, Leicester getting Brendan Rodgers in 2019 was kind of like the get it up, you back to us from the, like 19 years later. You're like,
payback. You know the thing, I've looked into it so much, so deeply, not just through my own memory banks, but obviously looking at the old newspaper archive, etc., JP, to prepare myself for the various live events we've done with Martin O'Neill. And at that time, there's an argument to say that he was probably the third in relation to Premiership managers down south, probably behind Alex Ferguson and Arsene Wenger. At that point, Leeds United wanted him. There was a suggestion that Alex Ferguson fancied him as someone who could succeed him at Man United at some point. And when Dermot Desmond asked Alex Ferguson who should I go for, Martin O'Neill was the guy that he suggested. I mean, that was the quality. That was a stock that he had at that point, and he comes to Celtic. And the thing with that, again, pointing it out, it was Dermot Desmond, because at that point, the people making the decisions, or the people who should have been making the decisions, you were talking Alan McDonald was the CEO at this point, and it was him that had brought in the dream team. He wanted Kenny Dalglish. Kenny Dalglish wanted John Barnes, so we got them both. And the last thing that McCann said to McDonald when McCann was leaving and obviously handing over the baton to somebody else, do not employ Kenny Dalglish as a manager of this football club. First thing Alan McDonald tried to do was go and get Kenny Dalglish. He was transfixed on this notion that Dalglish would come back to Celtic and bring loads of success. Didn't happen. So did you, as a Celtic fan, looking back, did you even trust the board to make the right decision?
Well, that's
Dermot Desmond coming.
But the thing is, Kenny Dalglish, we'll never know, but Kenny Dalglish might have been a successful Celtic manager without John Barnes there as the person that was running the show on the park, so to speak. Because has there ever been any real... I can't remember if you asked John Barnes if Kenny Dalglish was part of his kind of match day preparation, or did he have any input into...
No, he signed the players. That's the one big thing I took from speaking to John Barnes, is that the players were signed. And Bobby Pettis said this as well. All negotiations were Kenny Dalglish.
Right.
John Barnes was not part of the negotiation process. So I think Barnes was given the task of coaching the players he was provided with. And he had this notion that he could play a formation, but I don't think he had the players to fit that formation. We had some moments. I mean, I've said before, going into that Aberdeen League Cup final that we won 2-0, we had put 5, 6 and 7 past them that season already. We had dismantled them that season. When I watched the game back, actually, and I'm going to do more of this because things are frozen in time. It's great to go back and revisit them, JP. We probably should have won the game 5-0. There was a ball off the bar. There was 2 off the line. I think Jackie almost scored. Lubo almost scored. We had so many chances. Jim Leighton was in goals. He was probably about 50 at the time. But there were so many chances to really put them to the sword. But the reason I brought that up, Flying Haggis, stop being so negative, mate. The world needs positivity. That kind of nonsense will just absolutely blow you out the water. If you think, and then I'm going to go to a friend of mine, Jared Hill, in Australia, Celts Down Under, and he says, in his Australian accent that I'm not going to try and replicate. He says, "Don't tell me how to support my football team, mate." Right, so that is basically it. So think about that in an Australian accent. That's what I'm saying to you, Flying Haggis. If you keep coming back with the negativity, you'll not be welcome, mate. Listen, disagree with us. Absolutely disagree with us on our points and our opinions on football. We welcome the discourse, but don't be negative because we've had enough of that, really. Get a statue of Rod Stewart. You're on the wind-up, John Doe. But the reason I brought this one up, JP, I got a great conversation yesterday with Frank McAvennie about World Cup 86. And this came on the back of Macca being the second highest goal scorer in what was then called English First Division, now the Premiership, behind Gary Lineker, who won the Golden Boot. So Macca was playing for West Ham, who for a period, right up until the last couple of weeks, of the last 2 games of that campaign, could have won the league, which is sensational in itself. Had that great partnership, him and Tony Cottee up top. And then he goes to the World Cup as part of Alex Ferguson's World Cup team. I mean, talk about peaking your powers, right? So he goes to Mexico. But before they go to Mexico, right, they go to LA, of course. And Charlie Nicholas is also in the squad. And him and Charlie have obviously, during their time down in London, got used to maybe going out for a wee sherbet here and there, a few swallies, etc. So they are invited by Rod Stewart to meet up somewhere in LA. And this is prior to the World Cup finals, JP, for a few refreshments, which they do. And Macca thinks, going by his book as well, he thinks that was one of the reasons that he never started the game in the World Cup. Neither did Charlie, I don't think, unless he started against Germany. I need to check that. But Macca didn't start a game. And he wasn't even stripped for the final match against Uruguay. And this is a player, if you think of Lineker for, at the time, Everton, right? He was the top goal scorer. He scored 2 goals more than McAvennie, Golden Boot winner. He goes and scores more goals than anybody else at the World Cup. You've got McAvennie, doesn't even start a game. And it's just like that moment in time, JP, that you think that was the moment that he could have become an absolute superstar. Had he done so, he probably would never have made it back up the road to Celtic.
No, probably not. And the thing is, you kind of know that if he was on it and he was given a platform to play, I don't mean on it. I don't mean on it in that respect. On the sauce, I just mean more if he was switched on, shall we say, and was given a platform to play. I mean, he was a really, really good player. He was. And a goal scorer, and I mean those goals were big moments in that Scottish Cup final. There's no two ways about it. I mean, that the pressure that they were under at that point to get a goal, never mind 2. I mean, talk about writing yourself into folklore. I just love when Tommy Burns says, in 100 years' time, when people look back, I'll be in the team that won the double. So will McAvennie. He's a goal scorer, you know. Everybody in that team was absolute heroes, and they always will be to me, which is why I'm on that quest to get my shirt signed by.
That will happen. I mean, you think about the centenary team. We actually spoke about that famous quote. I'll never forget that. Right, he was given the base of the Scottish Cup, Tommy Burns. And I remember, you know, the post-match, I love all that as well, because when you eventually get the VHS and the DVDs and all that as a Celtic fan, you see the goals. You don't see much of the post-match stuff and the pre-match stuff. And when you watch it back, you always notice something different. But I remember, like yourself, I wasn't at the Dundee United game, but I was watching it. And after the game, there's Tommy Burns and he's in tears. And I'll never forget, he was wearing these Nike football boots that at the time they had their neon yellow swoosh. And right along the back of them in capital letters, Nike. Can you remember the boots?
100%. The first football boots I ever had were gold versions of them. I can't remember what they were called. I'm tricking myself into saying they were Nike Tiempos, but I don't know if Tiempos existed back then or not. But yeah,
somebody in the comments will know.
I used to. The first thing I did when. And this is how sad I was. The first thing I did whenever we got a catalogue in, I was like straight to the trainers and just looking at trainers and football boots. And I know people in the comments will go straight away to say, "Oh, I bet that wasn't the only thing you were looking at in the catalogue." But I'm telling you, I've got pieces of paper where I've drawn pairs of trainers because I was just obsessed with trainers when I was a wee guy, and football boots. And I remember the Gary Lineker, Quasar Lineker Altos.
Oh, I remember the Quasars, yes. Yeah.
I wanted them so much. They were like that. They were my dream football boots when I was a wee guy, and I never ever got a pair. And I never got a pair of Pantofoladoros either.
Oh, but you remember these things like Dalglish had the deal with Puma, Maradona, Puma King, the Quasar with Gary Lineker, New Balance. Brian Robson was the first guy I ever remember seeing wearing New Balance football boots. And Mark McNally, of course, wore Arrow. Where was I going with that? So Tommy Burns is sitting at the end of the game and he's got the base of the Scottish Cup with these brilliant Nike boots on, probably the laces out, and he's in tears. And as a wee fan, obviously the famous interview with Jim White, you'd heard that. And the thing with me, I remember hearing that interview and thinking, this guy's different. This player, this Tommy Burns fella, he's different. And obviously I'd been in his testimonial at the beginning of that season, my first ever Celtic game. But when did you ever hear a guy coming on and not only addressing they're there and they're always there, the Celtic fans, but he talked straight to the camera about a wee guy that he's going to visit up at the hospital on Monday morning. I think his name was John Paul. Aye. And he says that right to the... Where is he now? Where is that wee guy that was in the hospital? Is he still with us? Now, the reason I ask, JP, right? So there is obviously, there's a campaign at the moment for the canonisation of Tommy Burns, right? And what is happening is those who are involved in the campaign are building almost a case, if you like, to present, to say this man changed people's lives. In fact, this man saved people's lives in many cases, right? And he'd done a lot of stuff. And again, having had the absolute pleasure of speaking to his two daughters previously, and Jonathan as well, he's done things in the past that were never really publicised. Obviously we all know about the wee guy he was going to go up and see on the Monday because he said it live on the telly. But there's loads of occasions where he has been there for people. I mean, one of the big things I always remember is Hags, Lawrence Haggerty. Remember the young kid whose feet were burnt in the fire and all that. So Tommy was up there at the hospital every single night praying. Every single night. And the only reason I know that is because the priest who eventually gave the young kid his last rites told me, because he was by his bedside. And Tommy Burns, no publicity, just because that was the right thing to do, and that's what Tommy Burns did. So the group of campaigners are looking for examples of how Tommy Burns positively impacted on people's lives. Anybody's, JP. And they've actually said, could you put it out in a podcast? They can get in touch with me and I can pass on all the information and the details to these guys who are actually also making a documentary on the great man as well. So get in touch. You can do that on here, of course, on the social media channels, via email, pauldondykes@gmail.com. That's the boots. Is that with a gold swoosh?
No, that's not the ones with the Nike and the big Nike writing round the back, but that's the ones I had. They were my first football boots when I was a wee guy. Nike Tiempos, I was right.
Phenomenal. I had Quasars. I did. I definitely had Quasars. I need to have
a look at the ones.
Yeah, aye. They were white and red. Obviously,
I'm pretty sure Mark Hughes had a pair as well.
Did he?
I'm not sure. I need to look that up, but I think he might have had a
how things have changed. Now you can buy a pair of Nike high tops for your Fortnite character. It's completely different now, JP. It really is. Liam Devine, you're in and you're on the YouTube. Any paradigm which promotes the free expression of working people is deemed sordid by the political class. And I think we see that on a regular basis. Now, J. Conley J. Larkin says also about Frank McAvennie. Met Macca at Lennoxtown years ago, invited him out in Newcastle with myself and all players from France, Slovenia, Sweden and Italy. He declined, clearly a changed man. Tell us more about that night out, J. Conley J. Larkin. That sounds like an interesting one. And Strangelove the Doctor says, I've been talking about building a Celtic Village around Celtic Park for years. Why not create an all-year-round revenue stream? Well, yes, we have chatted about that. I think it really came to my mind, JP, where I was up at Celtic Park a lot, where it was more or less empty on a Monday morning doing a Wandering Paradise. Normally when you're there, it's buzzing. It's absolutely buzzing with people and you're meeting folk and chatting and all the rest of it. But going up on a Monday morning, it was absolutely empty. And it was at that point that I really realised the opportunity that sat there at Celtic Park for the club to expand and have things like Strangelove the Doctor that would be there all year round that you could enjoy, not just about the money, but just to make the experience better for people that come to the football park. Because at the moment, what is their experience? They maybe have a tour, they maybe go to the superstore, and they might be able to go into the stadium. So it's really about looking at that footprint around the park, isn't it? And saying what else can be done.
Well, we said this before, and I said, there should be a delegation that goes for, a few months around Europe and goes and picks up best practice. And if they're looking for volunteers to do that, then I'll happily
I'll go.
put my name forward to do that. But no, obviously there's so many examples throughout Europe of clubs that are. I mean, AC Milan, for example, I've been there twice, and anytime I've been there, I've always thought there's not really a lot around here. It's kind of like Celtic Park. It's out of town. It was a bit run down, needed regeneration round about it, which has obviously happened in terms of the housing round about Celtic Park, with the flats being knocked down and sort of just better quality housing being built. Because if you remember, opposite the old school, the houses there used to be pretty rough, and they've regenerated them, and that's good. But there's loads of grounds you can go to in Europe where there is loads of stuff outside the ground, and there is sort of I don't know, just areas where there's like food vans, and I mean, when I say food vans, I mean food vans and beer vans as well, or like craft beer, like the sort of thing you see at a festival, where you go to a corner of a festival and they've got like interesting sort of food trucks and interesting kind of a gin bar or whatever on a wee van or whatever, things like that. Just a bit of variety, a bit of you could have a Buckfast van. I mean, the Buckfast are selling cans now of cans of things like that. That could be a thing. They make a fortune.
Well, there's so much. Like you said, think about all the different festivals, music and otherwise, that are able to do this and make the entire space an interesting space to be. And like he says, the fact that you can, strange love the doctor, you can walk around, it's almost like the Celtic Village, and you can do it on a day-to-day basis. Kids go up to Celtic Park probably hoping to see Hoopy. There's so many different things you can do, JP. And I think that it would be interesting if we were to take the title party to Celtic Park at the end of this season. Jungle Lion, unless it's lashing rain on the grass all day, mayhem, absolutely. Brings back the Glastonbury mud years, which I thankfully was not part of, JP, but I've seen a few
but if you think
swamps at Tina Park.
I know, obviously I get that, but invariably we seem to get our kind of wee window of great weather in May normally. It's normally May and June. And then the summer just
when you
ends.
think back to that game you watched with your old man, that McAvennie scored 2 goals, it's the sunshine you remember. It's just
sunshine and dust. Sunshine and dust getting kicked up. That's the atmosphere that I remember seeing on the TV. But I mean, if you think back to all the title celebrations of recent years, I don't recall any of them being in the rain. They've all been in kind of glorious sunshine, and folk going home and waking up the next morning with like the worst sunburn they've ever had in their life because they've not put any sun cream on in 30-degree heat. But nah, I get obviously the point that if it was raining, it would kick up the grass, and they would obviously be damaged, and you'd hope that wouldn't be the case. But I don't know. I go back to what I said. I mean, if it's a possibility, then why not use it?
I agree. Absolutely agree. We could be one game closer to that title winning party this weekend, playing St Johnstone. And I don't think there'll be many surprises in terms of the team lineup. I would go Sinisalo in goals with Johnston at right back, Schlupp at left back. Nawrocki keeps his place for me, like you said, JP, with CCV. My midfield would be unchanged. It's Hatate, Engels and McGregor. Kuhn, Maeda, Jota. Some might say a big part of that team picks itself. What you've now got, though, is you've got guys like Bernardo, Ida, Taylor, Forrest on the bench, people that you can rely on if you need to call on them as well. Yeah. What about yourself? Any changes to that lineup? That predicted 11?
Maybe Bernardo coming in for a start just to get his fitness back up. I don't know. Hatate, I don't know what you thought about him on Saturday, but I was watching him with a keen eye, especially after some of the replies and the comments to last week's show in terms of you've been really, really harsh on Hatate, and it's just like, well, are we though? I mean, genuinely, are we? I mean, I Eddie and Pierce behind me what they rated Hatate by the end of the game for that game on Saturday, and I'm pretty sure Pierce said 4 out of 10, which I thought was extremely harsh. I don't think anyone was a 4 on the park on Saturday when you're winning 3-0 at home. But Hatate, to me, wasn't a 7, 8 or a 9 on Saturday. I would say at best a 6. There was a couple of nice turns and a couple of passes. Yes, he puts the ball through for Kuhn for the third goal. I think that was. But that wasn't a dominant, swashbuckling display by Rio Hatate in that game. And that's what I was looking for. I was looking for a 7, 8, 9, and I didn't get it. And I'll look at him again on Sunday and assess him in the same way, because you're talking about a guy that you're wondering whether or not you want to keep him beyond the end of this season. And I just genuinely don't know if we could or should, because it might just be some people's time at a football club just runs its natural course. Yeah. And he's won the league every year he's been here. He's won a treble, a double. Is his appetite for the Scottish game not the same as it was when he arrived? I mean, guys like Maeda you don't find them that often. So, of course, it would be insane to Maeda's been here the exact same time. But you look at Maeda's performance versus Hatate's performances, and they're night and day.
And how Maeda's developed. This is they're the same age as well, both 27.
Well, there you go. Another reason to point out perhaps his, heads out the door, so to speak. Don't want to use that analogy again. I know I've been quite tired, but I just think sometimes players like Greg Taylor, for example. Greg Taylor has been amazing for Celtic. I don't think you can doubt that. We wouldn't have won and had the success that we've had in the last 5-6 years without Greg Taylor playing the majority of those games. Yes, he's got limitations, but
Taylor was massive in the success that Ange Postecoglou. He was huge in those 2 seasons under Ange. Unbelievable the way he adapted to playing that inverted role. He was huge.
And not just that, a voice in the dressing room as well. And I know you don't keep players around just to have patter in the dressing room. I think that's ridiculous, but you can't underestimate the importance of that. And I think there was clear evidence of that with Callum McGregor coming back into the team on Saturday. There was somebody else said in the comments last week that Callum McGregor's been rubbish for the last 2 years, and I was just like, what?
The big thing is, JP, there's nothing wrong with having opinions, and what we were talking about last week was our opinion on Rio Hatate. That was it. So disagree, absolutely, but that's what this is all about. But there needs to be some kind of form of reason why you think X, Y, or Z has been rotten for the last 2 years. Callum McGregor, if you were to look at even just his goal return as having one of his best seasons in a Celtic jersey, there's only been 2 other seasons where he's scored double figures. And he's heading that way this season. I saw a big difference at the weekend with him starting.
The commenter that said that, what were their thoughts when he plays that absolutely brilliant ball through to Maeda? It was perfectly weighted. The goal that we needed to open the scoring, by the way, to change the psychology of the game, and it's come via an assist from Callum McGregor. There was also a few other balls where he just fizzed passes in, and you're like, that is what we were missing in that game against Rangers. 100% was just that kind of just organisation and voice on the park to make sure people, if their level dips at any point on the pitch and he sees that, then he'll make sure that the level goes back up. And I'll repeat, I know he played at Ibrox in January, but he didn't have an opportunity to remedy that. And you watch that documentary where he's going around the dressing room and you see him, he even swears at one point, actually. He's like clapping his hands on, come on, they came here last year and won 2-0. They're not leaving here with anything, all right? And he's just like going around, like G'ing up everybody. Like, that's what you would have wanted in the dressing room against Rangers a couple of weeks ago, because that stubbornness and will to win and winner's mentality was missing in that game. No doubt about it. He's a captain for a reason. He's not a captain just out of sympathy because he's a Scottish Celtic Academy player. He's the captain for a reason.
No, his leadership qualities can't be questioned. I mean, if Hatate doesn't make the starting 11 and Bernardo comes in, what does that look like? Who's playing where for you in the midfield, JP?
Potentially moving Engels back and McGregor up just to see how that looks. I don't know.
Because I like Bernardo in there. I like Bernardo in the number 6, if you want to call it a number 6.
Well, yeah, maybe, but I just think Bernardo obviously probably needs game time, doesn't he? I mean, I would think that I've been out for this length of time, bringing him on for 10, 15 minutes here or there. Maybe he starts the team the same as the weekend, and then, you know, seeing how we are at half time, he'd maybe make changes earlier than he would do otherwise, just to give guys a bit of time out in the pitch to get used to playing again, because he's not playing in reserve games, is he? He's not getting the opportunity to play any other time other than a weekend. We've got no midweek games until the midweek game in the split, so there's no as if there's other, you know, opportunities to just we're overloaded with games. It's mad that we had this December, January where it was absolutely insane, and then now it's kind of calmed down. And
is there a reason for that, JP, that I'm not seeing? Could we not spread the games out a wee bit better?
You would think, you know, just to give people a break. I mean,
and before Christmas.
It was relentless for that 2 months. It was relentless.
Before Christmas. No. They don't think of the fans. By the way, the Flying Haggis, I've heard so much worse. Don't worry about it, mate. I'm not taking it personally, but you can't be a loyal supporter of Acsom. You need to be a devout supporter of Acsom. I'm generally upset you dug me up. It feels, it's not personal. Nothing's personal. Flying Haggis.
PJI, the Magnum PI now, investigator, Paul John investigator.
Yeah, I need to grow a moustache, a Mauser. I've not been able to do it in my 46 years on God's green earth, so it's not happening. Thank you, every single one of you, for getting involved. Let us know about all the big talking points in the comment section. If you're watching on the catch-up, it's always a pleasure to speak to John Paul Mason on the Thursday. What are you doing gig-wise, JP? Are you
Northside this weekend?
2 nights at Tuts.
I've got a Glasgow band called Spires playing tonight, sold out. Northside on Saturday, sold out. I messaged Simon Donnelly the other day. I was like, "What day are you coming?" He was like, "Mate, I'm absolutely gutted. I'm in Spain." He's genuinely gutted about missing. He's like, he's in Spain for a gig or something like that. I know, obviously worse places to be than Spain of a weekend, but I think he's genuinely like, oh man, this might not happen again. Northside doing 2 nights in Tuts, because if they do another show, logic would state that they would do 1 night in a bigger venue. So maybe the Tuts thing won't happen again. But yeah, I'm working I'm going to go to the game on Sunday and then come back and work the Sunday Northside show. So looking forward to that. I didn't realise that my 12-inch of Shall We Take a Trip was produced by Ian Brodie, the Lightning Seeds.
I did not know that.
And it was also released in Factory Records, which I didn't realise either. It's a factory release. So I'll get to speak to Dermo and Grillham and Tony Wilson and stuff like that, which is
you'll love it.
Which is pretty cool, because last Friday I did a show with Pete Wiley, and his patter was absolutely unbelievable. Like, what a guy. Massive Liverpool fan, but also loves Celtic. We were standing chatting to him at the end of the night, and I said something was mentioned about my heart as big as Liverpool, which is one of his songs which gets played at Anfield on matchday. Pulled out my season card and he grabbed it off me and kissed it, and he was like, oh, God bless the Celtic. But Pete Wiley's patter was dynamite. What an amazing guy. Like, his stories about roadieing for the Clash and being at a rooftop garden party in Kensington Gardens, Richard Branson's bar, and it had flamingos walking around and all that, and Eric Clapton and Prince jamming on a wee stage. This is 1987, by the way. Eric Clapton and Prince jamming on a stage behind him. He didn't even realise it was happening because he was in a scrap with one of the members of China Crisis. I mean, that was the kind of level of chat I was getting from him. He phoned me the next morning just being like, oh, I had such a great night, you know, like, thanks for looking after us and all that. And he was away down to the Brudenell in Leeds on Saturday for the next show of the tour. But just mad stories and patter. So hopefully you've met Dermo. So I'm looking forward to meeting him.
Good guy. You'd have loved it last week down in Manchester to speak to Gaz Whelan. And in the room, I always say this because similar things have happened to me in Liverpool, where you go to meet somebody and there's just other people that are just casually wandering about and part of the thing. So we're in the studio, and there was a chap who was in the band Big Arm with Paul Ryder. There was also a member of a certain ratio, Donald Johnson. He was there. If we had hung about a wee bit longer, Rowetta was coming in to cut some vocals because we were in the recording studio where he recorded the album. And then he goes, and Steve Ness might pop in. He played guitar for Dermo when Dermo was doing the solo thing. And I was like, I know Steve. I don't know why that's giving me a thumbs up. Steve Ness got a big Celtic tattoo on his forearm as well. So it's mad because you're just sitting there like, wow, taking all this in. Trying not to fanboy them.
No, but I also asked them about the KLF because he did a version of It's Grim Up North where it's his vocals saying all the northern cities in the song, not Bill Drummond. And then he tells me like about this thing that happens in Toxteth every November, the 23rd of November, the Toxteth Day of the Dead. The KLF are building a giant pyramid with bricks. You can buy a brick and you can put some of your loved one's ashes in the brick. And they're building this giant pyramid, and they reckon it's going to take somewhere between 300 and 1,000 years to finish. So it's up to people, like next generations of those people, to keep it going. And Pete Wiley sang at the first Toxteth Day of the Dead. He sang a cappella in the dark, Que Sera Sera. And I was just like, that's amazing, man. It was right up my street. I was like, that sounds brilliant. And there's like a DJ set on every 23rd of November. They have a DJ set with the KLF. Sorry? It's
just such an original idea. And this is what we were talking about around Celtic Park, JP. There's so much. I'm not saying we should build a pyramid, but there's so much originality within the Celtic fan base that we could come up with a lot of stuff that would appeal to Celtic supporters around about the stadium. Absolutely. Listen, JP and I talked like this for ages after we click stop. And I know that it's not everybody's cup of tea. So we will probably take this away to the green room and have another wee chat offline. But thank you, every single one of you, for getting involved. Always an absolute pleasure. 1,300 strong on this Thursday afternoon. Let us know your thoughts on the big talking points in the comment section. And join us again tomorrow at 12:30 for a Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers, Paul.